Good morning, everybody. This is the men's Sunday school class here at Mercy Baptist Church, and this morning we're going to be in Psalm 143, which is this is our next to last Sunday school lesson in the book of Psalms. We'll be going into Galatians next week, and in our journey through. I guess you could say our book has selected different psalms for us. As you go through psalms, you encounter a pretty good sampling, I guess, of the human experience. We see psalms when there's excitement or because things are going well, that thanking the Lord for His blessings, and there's other times when the psalmist is in desperate need and calling upon God, and Lord, help me in this situation. I won't say it's something like Psalm 73 or something other where the psalmist is envious of the wicked. And then he realizes, the blessings of God is so much better than even what the wicked who seem to prosper in this life. They get rich and things go well for them. But anyway, there's the whole gamut of human experience expressed in the Psalms. And in this particular psalm, which we'll see is a Psalm of David, he's going through a desperate time. He's undergoing persecution from an enemy, and this psalm is basically a prayer to the Lord, expressing his desperate desire that the Lord would come to his aid, rescue him from his dangerous situation, and he expresses his discouragement of how because of the situation, he's lost all heart, and he understands that his only hope is in the Lord, and so this psalm is his expression of his desperation of, Lord, if you don't step in, if you don't help me, then I don't know what I'm going to do. And how many times have we been there when something a situation has become dire, and we're like, we just don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to get out of this, and we have to depend on the Lord, both for our encouragement and for the actual deliverance from the situation. So this may be enlightening as we. Well, of course it's going to be enlightening. This is God's Word, but if you haven't been going through a situation like this, then maybe you can draw hope from this. So, Father, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you again for your love, your mercy, and grace, Father. Thank you, Lord, for the hope and the encouragement that we find in your Word, Lord. And I just pray, Father, as we study this lesson, that you would open our eyes and our hearts and our minds to your word, Lord. Help us to just soak in, Father, your love and compassion, and that you are always there for us, Father. And all these things we ask in the precious name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. The title of this psalm, right up there above the first verse, it says a Psalm of David. So even though some titles of the psalm tells us the occasion of why it was written or the purpose of it being written and the author, this one only gives us the author. It just says it's a Psalm of David. Now we can tell by the content of it that it's a prayer of David. He's in a desperate situation. He's looking to the Lord to rescue him from his enemies. But now some commentators, even though we don't know the actual occasion that it was written, some commentators suggests that he may have written this during the time when he's fleeing from Absalom. That Absalom executed the coup against his own father, ran David out of, or David has to flee for his life, basically with not much more than the clothes on his back, because he has to leave in such a hurry because he's afraid that Absalom, his own son. I mean, that's pretty bad when your own son wants to kill you. And if this is true, we'll probably look at this in that light, that his own son is wanting to kill him. You could drop into great discouragement when your own flesh and blood is out to get you. All right. So verse 1, it says, "Hear my prayer, O Lord. Give ear to my supplications. In thy faithfulness answer me, and in thy righteousness. And enter not into judgment with thy servant, for in thy sight shall no man living be justified." All right, so that first line, he says, "Hear my prayer, O Lord, give ear to my supplications." And notice he's using the Hebrew poetic technique of parallelism, where he'll say the same thing twice, just a little bit differently. But here he says, "Hear my prayer, O Lord," and then he says, "Give ear to my supplications." And the Hebrew word there for supplications, it means your earnest requests. It's not like you're sitting across the table from your friend and you ask him, "Hey, can I have a French fry?" or something casual, where if he says no, no big deal. This is his earnest request. He's saying, "Lord, I'm in desperate need. I need you to listen to me, to hear my prayer. I need you to give ear, listen to what I've got to say, and please respond." It is the very fact. It is showing how desperate David is. This is my earnest request. Then he says, "In thy faithfulness answer me, and in thy righteousness." David is asking the Lord to answer his prayer, and he's not saying, "Lord, answer my prayer because I'm King David, or because I've done all these things for you and I've served you all these years." He's not bragging on himself and trying to show how he's worthy of God's answering his prayer. He says, "Lord, hear my prayer, give ear to my supplication." He says, "In thy faithfulness answer me, and in thy righteousness." He's basing the fact that, "Lord, you respond to my prayer because you are faithful and because you are righteous." Because as far as faithfulness goes, he knows the Lord is faithful to those that belong to him, those that trust in him, those that swear their allegiance to him. He said, "Lord, I know you're faithful. I belong to you. I'm one of your children. I love you, and I'm trusting in you, and I know you're faithful to help those that trust in you." And then he says, "And in thy righteousness." God is a righteous God. He's not going to neglect those that are his, that are suffering unjustly, that when they're being oppressed. Lord, he says, you're not the type of God. You're not an unrighteous God who would just let that go on without responding to it. Lord, you are a righteous God. So David's saying, Lord, because of who you are, because of your faithfulness and because of your righteousness, Lord, you respond to me. And then notice this next line. He says, "And enter not into judgment with thy servant, for in thy sight shall no man living be justified." That word for judgment, it means to decide a case, or it can mean justice. He's basically saying, "Lord, if you took me to court and evaluated me to decide, am I worthy of you responding to my prayer, of you intervening in my life to rescue me from this situation?" He says, "I'm going to be in trouble." He says, "Don't enter into judgment. Don't give me what I deserve." See, David is not saying, "Lord, answer my prayer because I deserve it. You owe me, Lord, because I've been a faithful servant to you," because David knew that he wasn't. But he recognizes his own sinfulness, that he's human. He says, for in thy sight shall no man living be justified. He says, Lord, any man crying out to you, none of them can say, Lord, you owe me, you need to do this because I'm your servant and because I deserve this. That's why he says, Lord, in thy faithfulness answer me, and in thy righteousness. Lord, based on how good of a God, not how good of a servant I am, Lord, but how good of a God you are. That's why you should do this for me, Lord. That's why you should come to me and rescue me in my time of need here, is not because I deserve it, because I don't. He said, because you are worthy. And how many times have I say me, but any one of us, we're ashamed to go and ask for the Lord for help because we know that we've been unfaithful to Him, or that that we're unworthy of the least of His blessings. Hey, every one of us is unworthy of salvation. But that's why He came. I've prayed sometimes, and Lord, I know I don't deserve you answering my prayer, but Lord, I'm asking for this, and I probably didn't go to the point of what David did. Said, Lord, answer my prayer based on your righteousness, your faithfulness, and just the fact that you're a good God. But this is why Jesus Christ came. Jesus said, the Son of Man cometh into the world to save sinners. Because the sinners deserved it? No, it's because He loved them and He chose to do so. And so none of us can come to the Lord and say, Lord, answer my prayer because I deserve it, because you owe me, because of anything, any value of me. It's because of how gracious of a God and faithful and righteous of a God that you are. All right, so verse 3. David now explains why he's in such a desperate need. He says, for the enemy hath persecuted my soul. He hath smitten my life down to the ground. He hath made me to dwell in darkness as those that have been long dead. Therefore is my spirit overwhelmed within me. My heart within me is desolate. Let's unpack that. He says, for the enemy hath persecuted my soul. The word persecuted there means to pursue or to harass. The enemy has been after David. He's been on David's trail. David said, look, I've been running, I've been fleeing, fleeing. And if this was written on the occasion of Absalom, Absalom was on his trail. David was fleeing for his life because he knew Absalom wanted to kill him. Because there was no other way he could take the throne other than to kill David. As long as David was alive, Absalom couldn't be on the throne. But he says, the enemy hath persecuted my soul. He's been after me. He's been harassing me. He's been after me. And then he says, he hath smitten my life down to the ground. Of course, smitting means to smite someone is to hit them, to knock them down. And so he says, he hath smitten my life down to the ground. I think David is talking here in figurative language. Obviously, he didn't get literally knocked to the ground, but he said, he's smitten my life to the ground. He says, what the enemy has done to me is just as devastating to me as if he had killed me. If he had knocked me to the ground, and he's like ready to die because of that, because when you're in a battle, you get knocked to the ground, you're in trouble because the enemy makes it that much easier for the enemy to finish you off. But he says, he hath smitten my life down to the ground. Then he says, he hath made me to dwell in darkness as those that have been long dead. Those that have been long dead. Of course, they are those who are dead. Well, he's talking about, he says, you've made me to dwell in darkness. He has made me to dwell in darkness as if He's talking about the darkness of the grave, that when you die, you go off into the idea that you're going off into darkness. And so he said, Lord, the enemy's smitten my life to the ground. He's made me to dwell in darkness as those that have been long dead. He says, Lord, I am dead inside. I have no life within me. What he's done to me has been so devastating. I just feel like either I'm dead or I could just die. Then he says, therefore is my spirit overwhelmed within me. Those that have went through, I can't think of the word, the intense depression, but where they feel like, there's no hope. Even to the point of considering suicide, because they don't know what to do. They don't see the way out. It's darkness all around me. And David's here saying, my spirit is overwhelmed within me. He says, Lord, I am just so overcome with my circumstances that I just don't know what to do, where to go. And he's just emotionally devastated. And if this is Absalom who has done this, then of course the prospect of his son wanting to kill him has turned against him. I'm sure that just knocked the wind right out of David. And so he says, my spirit's overwhelmed within me. And he says, my heart within me is desolate. I mean, he's basically saying the same thing over and over, just different ways, describing the discouragement that he's going through. He's lost all hope. He said, my heart within me is just desolate. There's just nothing there. I'm just like a dry desert within. And sometimes we go through situations like that where we just basically, in a figurative sense, get the wind knocked out of us, and we're just like, I just can't believe this has happened, and I don't know what I'm going to do, and I don't see any way out. And this is where David is. He's just thinking, I mean, if this is about Absalom, what Absalom has done to David, one day he's sitting on the throne, he's got money and riches, and everybody obeys him because he's the king, and then the next day he is totally out on the run for his life with just whatever he grabbed real quick to take with him, and his servant. He's got his servants and his friends with him, but he's basically had to leave everything behind, everything that he's known, and so he's just in a desperate strait here. Then verse 5, he says, I remember the acts of old. I meditate on all thy works. I muse on the works of thy hands. I stretch forth my hands unto thee. My soul thirsteth after thee as a thirsty land. Selah. So now David's just told us how desperate he is, how discouraged he is, depressed, but now he's starting to remember. He says, Lord, I remember the days of old. Lord, I remember these past days before this happened, Lord, how you've taken care of me, how you had blessed me. And when we go through situations like this is what we need to do. We need to go back and think, instead of being focused on the situation now and saying, Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've lost all hope. Look back how the Lord's took care of you in the past, and this is what David's doing. He says, I remember the days of old. He says, I meditate on all thy works. Talking to the Lord, he says, I muse on the work of thy hands. He's thinking, Lord, I've been in desperate situations before, Lord, and you always came through for me. You took care of me. I wouldn't be alive today if you hadn't have took care of me back then, Lord. So he says, I meditate on all thy works. I'm thinking about, Lord, your track record, as you could say. He says, Lord, you've never let me down before. And so, he's thinking, Lord, surely you're not going to let me down now. Why would you change? You haven't changed. And so he says, I stretch forth my hands unto thee. after remembering all the things that the Lord had done for him in the past, he said, Lord, you're my only hope. And so he's reaching out his hands. And to me, it makes me think of the picture of a child, a little child, maybe something's gone wrong, they're wanting something, they're in desperate need, maybe they're afraid of something, and they run up to mama or daddy and they're reaching their hands up saying, because they want to be picked up, they want to be protected, they want to be kept safe and comforted. Like if they stub their toe and they're crying because it hurts, and so they run up to mom and daddy and stretch out their hands. I think that's what David's doing. He says, Lord, I stretch forth my hands unto thee. He says, Lord, I need you to pick me up and protect me and comfort me and give me what I need. And then he says, my soul thirsteth after thee, as in a thirsty land. David felt like, he says, I am a dry land that's been going through a drought. He says, Lord, I need the water of your love, your attention, your presence. And so he says, just as a thirsty land is yearning for water, for rain, he says, Lord, I'm thirsting for your presence, Lord, because I need your help. I need your protection. I need your fellowship with me. And then he says, Selah. And we've seen that word Selah before. We don't really know what the word Selah means, but commentators believe that, or most commentators believe that the intent of the word is it means to pause and think about what's just been said. And so David said there, Lord, I'm in a desperate situation, but Lord, I remember what you've done for me, how you've took care of me in the past. And so, Lord, I'm reaching out to you for my need to take care of me. And so he says, Selah, stop and think about that. Meditate on that, chew on that for a little bit. So verse 7, he says, hear me speedily, O Lord. My spirit faileth. Hide not thy face from me, lest I be like them that go down into the pit. All right, so he says, hear me speedily, O Lord, for my spirit faileth. The word Hebrew word for faileth there, it means to come to an end. It can mean to be consumed. Like you have, like if you got flour in a jar and you use all of it, it's gone. He says, Lord, I've come to an end. My spirit faileth. It's come to an end. It's consumed. It can also mean to be exhausted. And so David here, probably more emotionally than physically, but he's just exhausted because of what the enemy's done to him. And so he says, Lord, hear me speedily. He says, because I'm at the end of my rope, you could say. He says, my spirit faileth. I am just about to give up, Lord. I am just at the end of my rope, and I have no energy left. I just don't know what else to do, Lord. So he says, hear me speedily. And then he says, hide not thy face from me, lest I be like them that go down into the pit. And so the expression, them that go down into the pit, refers to those who have died and gone into the grave. And so he says, Lord, you need to hear me speedily. In other words, Lord, I need your answer to my prayer, and I need it now. I need your help. Because if you don't, he says, if you hide your face from me, if you don't look to me and address my situation, Lord, he says, I'm going to be like those that go down into the pit. He said, I'm just going to die. He might be thinking emotionally, I'm going to be dead emotionally, or he may even, because Absalom, if this is about Absalom, Absalom's on his trail. Absalom wants to kill him. He says, Lord, I might not be here tomorrow if you don't help me today. Then it says, verse 8, he says, cause me to hear thy loving kindness in the morning, for in thee do I trust. Cause me to know the way wherein I should walk, for I lift up my soul unto thee. All right, so he says, cause me hear thy loving kindness. That word loving kindness, the Hebrew word means your goodness, your kindness, your faithfulness. And he says in the morning, and the word morning there means the break of day, just as the sun is the first light of the sun coming up. And so hearing is, I guess, one of the ways that it's one of the five senses. It's one of the ways that we become aware of things in our surroundings. And when you wake up in the morning, perhaps even before you open your eyes, when you wake up, you're still laying in bed and you might hear the birds chirping outside, and you're suddenly aware of, you're aware of your surroundings all of a sudden. And so David may be saying here, he says, Lord, in the mornings as I'm waking up, cause me to hear thy loving kindness, the fact that your goodness, your faithfulness, your kindness to me. He says, I want to start my day from the get-go, being aware that your loving kindness is there, that you love me, you take care of me, that you're going to be there with me all day long. And then he says, for in thee do I trust. He says, Lord, I'm not trusting in anything else. It's only in you. David's not hedging his bets thinking, well, I've asked help from these people. I've asked help from these other gods. And so I'm going to make sure that I've got all the bases covered. In case they let me down, I'm also asking you. No, he's placed all his hope. He says, Lord, in thee do I trust. I am trusting you and you alone. My help, some of my help may come from human hands, but it's because you provided those human hands to help me. But Lord, ultimately it's you that I'm trusting, Lord. Then he says, cause me to know the way wherein I should walk. David is saying, Lord, we've seen several verses. David's saying, look, I'm out of options. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know which way to turn, Lord. He says, so Lord, you cause me to know which way, cause me to know the way wherein I should walk. I think David's always wanted to know how, the way he should walk as a righteous man, following God's ways and such. But here I think in addition to that, he's also saying, Lord, I want to know which way I need to go from here. The enemy's after me. He's wanting to take my life. And I don't know how to respond to him. Lord, you show me which way I need to go, what direction I need to do, what I need to do, what direction I need to go, how I should walk. And then he says, for I lift up my soul unto thee. He's not trusting in his own self, in his own abilities, his own intelligence, because he's at the end of his rope. He says, Lord, I lift up my soul. He says, Lord, all I have is my soul, and I lift it up to you because I'm depending only on you. He says, in thee do I trust, and so I'm lifting my soul up to you, Lord. I'm not holding back and thinking, well, my friends over here might help me or also be part of the solution, Lord. He says, I lift up my soul unto thee. He says, Lord, you help me however way. A lot of times we ask the Lord and say, Lord, I want you to help me, and we already have it in mind how we want the Lord to help. If we can't pay the bills, we're like, Lord, help me win the lottery or help me do this. We plan it out for the Lord, and sometimes the Lord doesn't use the way we think it ought to be done. Here David's saying, Lord, I'll leave it up to you, Lord. I lift up my soul to you, where my soul, whatever the destiny for my soul is, Lord, I'm leaving that up to you. It's complete his submission to the Lord. So verse 9, he says, deliver me, O Lord, from my enemies, for I flee unto thee to hide me. Of course, the word deliver better means to rescue. So he's saying, rescue me, O Lord, from mine enemies. He's saying, Lord, I need you to help me because my enemies are after me and you're my only hope. So he says, deliver me from my enemies. And he says, I flee unto thee to hide me, Lord. I'm not thinking that my help is going to come from from human hands or even from other gods. I mean, David never considered other gods, but he says, Lord, I flee unto you. You are going to be my refuge. You're going to be the one that hides me and protects me from my enemies. Then verse 10, he says, teach me to do thy will, for thou art my God. My spirit, thy spirit is good. Lead me into the land of uprightness. All right, so he says, teach me to do thy will, for thou art my God. So David doesn't only want to be rescued from his enemies. He's not saying, just help me to get out of this situation with my enemies, Lord, and then I'll go on and do my own thing. He says, teach me to do thy will, for thou art my God. He says, Lord, you're my God, therefore I'm following you. I'm going to obey you. I want to do things your way, the way you, I'm going to live the way that you want me to live. So he says, teach me to do thy will. And this is more showing David's submission to the Lord. He says, Lord, I'm trusting you, and I'll just want to obey you and do things your way, the way you want me to do them. And then he says, thy spirit is good. Lead me into the land of uprightness. The word good there, it means pleasant or agreeable. He says, Lord, your spirit is good. It's a good thing. It's a pleasant thing, Lord, to be associated with you and to deal with you and to obey you and reap your blessings. Then he says, lead me into the land of uprightness. The Hebrew word there for uprightness, it literally means a level place. In a figurative sense, it means uprightness. A lot of times, I don't know, we have the expression if somebody is being honest, they're being, they're not trying to deceive you. They say, oh, well, they're on the level. They are, there's no, ups and downs with them. They are being level, no obstructions, but anyway, I think that's kind of what he's meaning here. Is lead me to the land of uprightness, or a level land where there's no, everybody operates, in integrity, in truth. They're honest. He says, Lord, your spirit is good. It's a good thing, Lord, to be associated with you. And I want to be in your land where things are upright, where things are level. Everything is good. There's no deceit. There's nobody out to get me or to take away from me the things that belong to me. These things are right. And then verse 11, he says, quicken me, O Lord, for thy name's sake. For thy righteousness' sake, bring my soul out of trouble, and of thy mercy, cut off mine enemies, and destroy all them that afflict my soul, for I am thy servant. All right, so he says, quicken me, O Lord, for thy name's sake. The word quicken there, the Hebrew word means to preserve alive or to revive. So he's saying, Lord, revive me. David has been in a deep, dark hole emotionally. He's been discouraged, even disillusioned, and depressed because of his dire circumstances. But here he says, quicken me, O Lord, revive me. And then he says, do it for thy name's sake. Not because I deserve it, not because, that you owe me, Lord. It says, do it for your name's sake. And so he's asking the Lord, he says, preserve my life and bring me out of my problems here for your name's sake, so the Lord would be glorified and not blasphemed. Because people might say, well, David trusted in the Lord, and the Lord let him down. And so that would not look good on David's, on the Lord's name. See, Moses also wanted to protect the name of the Lord when he was interceding for Israel, because the Lord was threatening to destroy Israel because of their sin. Numbers 14, verses 15 through 16, Moses is talking to the Lord. He says, now if thou shalt kill all this people as one man, Then the nations which have heard the fame of these will speak, saying, because the Lord was not able to bring this people in the land which he sware unto them, therefore he hath slain them in the wilderness. He says, Lord, it's going to look bad on your name. It's going to look like you weren't, that the problem was you, that you weren't able to complete what you promised you would do. And then the Lord forgave through Moses' intercession. So, Lord, David here, he says, quicken me, O Lord, for thy name's sake. He says, do this for your glory, Lord. He says, for thy righteousness' sake, bring my soul out of trouble. And it's the same thing because, well, first of all, do it because of your name. Then he says, for thy righteousness' sake, bring my soul. He says, because you are a righteous God. He said earlier, that the Lord was righteous, and through his righteousness and his faithfulness, answer me, O Lord. So here he says, for thy righteousness' sake, bring my soul out of trouble. He says, Lord, you're a righteous God that does not neglect those that are put their trust in you. So he says, Lord, bring me out because of your righteousness. Bring me out of my trouble. And this is, and of thy mercy, or in other words, for the sake of your mercy. He says, cut off mine enemies. He says, because you are a merciful God, that you show mercy to those who are trusting in you, those that love you. He says, because of your mercy, he says, cut off mine enemies and destroy those that afflict my soul. So he says, Lord, those that are coming after me, I belong to you, Lord. I've been trusting in you. He says, because of your mercy, then you cut off, or that is destroy my enemies and destroy all those that afflict my soul. And then he ends up saying, for I am thy servant, Lord. He says, Lord, don't forget that I belong to you. I'm your servant. I'm the one. I have been obeying you. And those that trust in you, Lord, you've promised you'd never forsake them. Lord, and I'm your servant. I am one of those, Lord, that you promised that you would not forsake, that you would not turn your back on or neglect. And so he's like, I'm your servant, Lord. I depend on you both to tell me what to do, and I'm your servant for you to protect me. All right, so we're going to be in Psalm 148 next week. Be our last lesson in Psalms. We'll be going into Galatians the following week, first week of December, first Sunday of December. And Galatians is a good study as well. But we'll pick up our next week.